we are live.
Okay, we are live. Well, here we are with another show for you. And as you may be able to see, Nori is not with us tonight. She will be missed, but she'll be back. And hello, hello. This is Broadcast Team Alpha, where we have cutting edge conversations while we explore the quantum possibilities. We will discuss some very interesting things here tonight. This is
Hello,
unfolding
Aggie.
right under our noses in this, well, what should I call it? Guided tour towards disclosure. And,
Absolutely. Good to see
yeah,
you tonight,
but
my
first,
friend. How are things there in, I think you're in Arizona tonight.
say again that.
I said, how are things there in Arizona?
Things are fine. I haven't looked out for several hours, and I'm sure still it's there, so it should be okay.
Excellent.
But I want to let you guys also know how you can connect with us. You can connect with us on www.broadcastteamalpha.com and also on our YouTube channel with the same name, Broadcast Team Alpha. And you may have seen this function on YouTube called Super Chat. So if you see it in your heart to help us out and support us that way, it will be wonderful. It's been a labor of love so far, lots of labor and lots of love. But here we are, and we plan to continue doing that. So, Tom, now it's your turn.
Aggie, how are you tonight, my friend?
I'm up around 96 and a half with gusts to 98.
Wow. It looks like we may have, it says we're live. We're not receiving enough video. We're having an issue right now uh, with our streaming.
Really?
Yes, and I'm going to look at it looks like we may have an issue with. Let me just stop the stream. We're going to stop and come back. So let me see what happens here. There we go. Okay, it looks like we're back.
Did we go out the first time?
Yeah, we lost the stream had gone down. It looks like, and it looks like we're okay now.
Okay.
So welcome back,
Yeah.
Augie. You did such a great job on the intro. It's time to do it again.
Again?
Again.
Okay. All right. Well, okay then. Hello, hello. You know that term. I have copyrighted that one.
That's right.
This is Broadcast Team Alpha, where we have cutting edge conversations and explore the quantum possibilities. And we will discuss this guided tour we are going through here towards disclosure. But first, I want to tell you how you can connect with us. And you can go to our website, www.broadcastteamalpha.com, and also on YouTube, the same channel. You'll find us on a lot of different places out there. So just wherever you go, just punch in our name and you'll probably find us there. And you may have seen the new function on YouTube also called Super Chat. So if you feel that you in your heart that you can support us that way, it will be wonderful. Because so far it has been a labor of love, lots of labor and lots of love. But we're going to keep giving the love and doing the labor. So we hope to do that you're satisfied with what we're doing so far. So Tom, now it's your turn.
All right, Augie, looking forward to tonight. It's really been interesting. We've had a lot of interesting developments lately. It seems about the time we covered this topic 2 weeks ago. Now we're into our third week of follow up on these kind of breaking things that are happening in ufology. One of which is this Wilson memo that's become kind of a hot topic lately. And Dan gave us a little bit of a breakdown last week and the week before. We've been talking about this. Then we also have this recent release by Jeremy Corbell of this Bob Lazar documentary where Bob Lazar talks, and the release of an interview that Joe Rogan did with Bob Lazar as well. So we have with us again our dear friend Dan Willis. Dan has
Mhm.
been covering this subject, and he's got firsthand connectivity with both Bob Lazar and these events. So, Dan, welcome to the show. This is great again to have you back. So, welcome back.
It's great to be here. Like being able to explore this with both of you and talk about it. So much to connect with this whole thing. I mean, when you see what the whole picture is, Bob Lazar working as a scientist, reverse engineering an S-4 facility, the Admiral Wilson leaked document that just came out this month, confirming these operations completely out of control of our legal government, out of the control of presidents, CIA directors, heads of intelligence. He was a head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You don't get much higher than that for intelligence, and he was denied access. So uh, I noticed there's a lot of buzz on the internet right now about this document. It's all over the place. I see even debunkers working on it. But there's too many correlating factors with this document that make it legitimate.
Well,
I knew about the meeting with Admiral Wilson and Dr. Greer, before I went to Washington in 2001, because it is what greenlighted the 20 witnesses that each of us testified in front of the mainstream media of the world, because Admiral Tom
you
Wilson
know,
said, if you can get your people together to know about this matter, to go on record, you have my permission to go before the media with this. This group is illegal, quote unquote. And so 20 witnesses, top secret military witnesses, people in the Air Force, captains, and so forth, all came forward. Explosive testimony, which was sanitized because what was implicating and what was being disclosed to the 22 cameras in the mainstream media is that our legal government has basically been infiltrated and taken over control from rogue operations.
and Dan,
Uh,
the thing
yes,
is that this
I can go rant
question
on
with
this thing forever.
it's okay, yeah. This thing with Joe Rogan's interview with Bob Lazar, you and I were talking about that earlier today a little bit.
Is excellent.
I found it fascinating. What was your take on the whole experience? The Joe Rogan interview that Bob just did. I think it was on the 20th.
Bob has been absolutely, as you know, I did a rogue video recording of the first time he went, public. And, when I've talked to Bob back in 1993, um, his complete story has been 100% consistent to present day. He hasn't changed one bit, and there's just so many factors that give credibility to him, besides, the discovery by Lawrence Livermore Labs in 2004 of the element 115, which was stable, as he said. And, the fact that they erased all his records and everything. But they couldn't erase the telephone book that had him as a scientist working at Los Alamos Labs. You can't get rid of all the phone books, but they did a damn good job, erasing all his uh, education records, his birth certificate, everything. They completely erased him.
But they also did not, I think through this documentary and through what Joe Rogan was saying, did he not take George Knapp back out to Los Alamos and show him around? I think that's what he said in the interview. He said, "Okay, we're going to solve this," and they actually went back. I didn't actually finish the entire documentary. I saw part of the documentary, but I think that they actually tied up a lot of these legendary loose ends about Bob. They really tied them up well in that Joe Rogan interview and in the documentary. I saw a completely different side of this man that really had never been revealed. So I found it very fascinating.
Well, he got to a point where, he was getting concerned, that he might get whacked off, like some of these people that, come forward as whistleblowers. So his thought was, seek out a journalist, like George Knapp, and that's when he was, is one of those shadow type silhouette things with the disguised voice, when he first is giving his on the television channel on
Did you
in Las
notice in the
Vegas.
interview, in the documentary, how he basically, if you knew the backstory like you just did, you recalled it from memory. So then, as you're watching this documentary, it shows George Knapp setting up the camera right outside the van, that he's doing that silhouette interview with Bob Lazar in the van. And so when you finally see it on TV, there's the clouds through the side passenger side window of the van while
Mhm.
George is doing that interview. So he actually showed a little backstory to him setting up the camera outside the van and then going in to shoot the interview inside the van, kind of
Yeah.
lending provenance to the interview. That yes, I was there. I was the guy that shot it, and I'm the guy that did that hidden camera interview. I can attest to this footage and to Bob's interview. I think he was trying to lend that credence to that.
Yeah, I don't know the whole backstory on that, but it probably did it for security
Of
reasons.
course.
Yeah, I
When he
think
made
so.
his rocket car, with a put a on a Honda or something, he put a jet engine. He was driving back and forth to work. He's gotten a paper, and he just happened to notice that Dr. William Tiller, the father of the hydrogen bomb, and also one of the newly set up MJ-12 members that happened back in the Eisenhower era. Um, they just lost a scientist because of cutting into one of the reactors on S4. And so they needed a replacement. And so here, he's looking at him. He's a physicist, works at Los Alamos. So he's an out of the box thinker, driving a rocket car. So he recommended him, and his resume got approved, and then he got into some very exciting work. But he wanted to share it with his friend John Lear. So they went out, on the day of the test on Wednesday, the least traffic, and
Do you think?
saw the disc being, right angle turns,
Do you think Bob's
movements.
Do you think Bob's involvement was purely coincidental that Teller said, "Yeah, get this guy in there," or do you think maybe there was a larger plan in play because maybe they knew somebody down the road knew what ultimately was going to happen, some kind of timeline thing, or maybe they knew
Doubt
that
it.
Bob might be, the guy to
Yeah.
do it.
Well, who knows, but I doubt it. It just happened to be, um, you know, I guess they should have checked him a little closer because they had a friend, John Lear, who was totally into all this stuff, and, being, his father being father of the Lear jet, and him being a CIA pilot with over 100 types of aircraft that he knew how to fly for the CIA. And he tells a lot of stories. I met him back in the 80s, and back
I
in
think,
Los
though, that
Angeles.
I do not believe there is any coincidence, because this is a matter and an industry and such highly managed and controlled. I do not think they will allow any coincidence. Somebody certainly showed up and said, I'm interested, or there's somebody that they may not have dealt with very long. I think there's long relationships in order to get into these positions. Except for maybe the minor scientists like Bob Lazar, they can get in and work on it, but it's so compartmentalized usually that they don't really know the whole picture. But the ones that know the picture, there's long histories behind those. I think they are very well known, and their coincidence factor, I think, was thrown right out the window.
Yeah,
That's my
well,
opinion.
they spent a lot of money on a security clearance. I had a
Yeah.
high level top secret security clearance, and they spent a lot of money on doing background checks and everything. So no doubt he already had a security clearance working at Los Alamos,
Yeah.
and they just upgraded him to Magi level or whatever.
That was
uh,
interesting to hear them say that he had gone to majestic level on his security clearance, and that's why I agree with Augie, because how could that be that this random guy gets selected? That's why I have like I told you earlier beforehand before the show, I have a new respect for him after seeing him in his own laboratory if you will. Sorry if I've overpronounced that, but to see him in his own lab doing real science. This guy's a real scientist. He's not just a contractor who's going to change circuit boards. This is a guy that knows how to do real physics, real science. So you see that in this documentary. So it kind of gave me a new respect for his abilities. And so,
Yeah.
was it a coincidence that they selected this guy? Just happened to be part of the labor pool. It may be that there was a higher guidance involved. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
You know,
think you get chosen. You don't get chosen for something like this unless you are in that category of the absolute brightest people in that field.
I agree.
a lot of people are still, debating whether or not, Bob Lazar is real or not, his testimony, and the whole thing, and this Admiral Wilson leak document, if it's real or not, if it's a fake or a fraudulent. If you look at the entire history of the whole thing, and one thing I noticed that they're not connecting is why, this whole connection with EG&G, which was coincidentally created in 1947, along with CIA and the U.S. Air Force and everything. There's a whole lot of things being set up back then, and people don't have a full grasp of history because of our history's been altered and changed. So we don't see the full connections going back to the end of World War II and what was going on, what transpired, what happened with Eisenhower when he lost control to the corporations, the whole connection with the corporate elite that have basically infiltrated and using our national security apparatus in order to have these special categorized projects in such a way that they're unacknowledged to even exist to presidents, CIA directors, or heads of intelligence.
Right, and this is what the whole Wilson memo was all about. Was that conversation where I can't believe you're not giving me access? I'm an admiral, the freaking commander of the Lord of the universe of this whole thing, and you're not giving me access? That was the incredulity moment for this Wilson memo, and that's what this finally he kind of got a clue through this conversation with, I guess, Davis about what's really going on.
That is key, Tom. That is absolutely key, what you're just saying, because the most important thing is what is the implication of what is being said. It's saying that there's a rogue, illegal operation going on using our system of government's national security apparatus in order to avoid any type of oversight, while at the same time, while hiding these operations with extremely advanced technologies.
Unbelievable.
They are suppressing the Earth scientists that try to come out with a solution to get off of nuclear, oil, or coal, or anti-gravity, which they've had since October of 1954. And then you've got, Ben Rich in '93 saying anything you can imagine, take ET home. You got To the Stars Academy with the Tic Tac and just releasing this stuff out. It becomes obvious once you have a grasp of the larger picture that's been hidden, you can see the controlled narrative of what's coming out and what they're wanting the people to perceive that don't have a historical background on the connections of all this. What's the significance of these unacknowledged special access programs that Dr. Greer's been talking about
programs,
since
all kinds of stuff going on, just
early '90s.
Technology that we have only an inkling into what little bit has been exposed through whistleblowers. So it's really just, it's mind boggling. But real quick, we did want to take just a quick second to acknowledge the folks in the chat room. Thank you folks for coming out. We've got somebody with practically a sentence for a name, the Angel Rock with L'Oreal Holven. Hello. Nancy Volker, Margaret Parker, and DD Desk 1, Margaret. Welcome to our show. Thanks for coming out. And if you get excited and you want to give us a super chat, we will hugely appreciate that. It helps us defray our costs, just for the infrastructure. We're not just nothing crazy, but if you can help us out, we appreciate it. There's a lot of work goes into this research, getting people connected, etc. So if you can help us out, we'd appreciate it. So if you have any questions for Dan, there was a comment made. It said
Mm.
from DD Desk One said the Rogan interview almost pictured Bob as unstable, using words like mental or drinking, headaches, etc. Not only that, I did notice in the interview that Rogan demeaned the idea of people making contact with ETs. I didn't really find that to be very um, positive. He had kind of a cynicism about people. He said he was making fun of people who were
Oh,
getting ET
well,
contact, where ETs are telling
well, I think it's
about
good he
putting the
kind of
planet. You
kind of
know,
makes it that he's not one of the UFO community. He's definitely
right?
not,
Yeah,
and he
he's
never
trying to get a little
was.
distance here. Yeah, yeah,
And he wasn't when he was a friend with John Lear, and then he went to John Lear and said, "Oh my God, I saw a disc." That's what he said to John, and because he wanted to verify his friend that yes, these things are existing. Yes,
yeah.
we do have secret operations. As when Eisenhower lost control, they moved everything from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where they had all this stuff in the Foreign Technology Division, and they moved it all controlled by the CIA, which controls it today over there, um, over to Area 51 and the extraterrestrials, which you had 9 craft. Some were German, some were extraterrestrial. And what's curious, if you look at the map on Google Map on that area of S4, the whole thing is a mercury mining town. In fact, it has a little road called Mercury Highway, and they have all these mercury mines all around. Now, isn't that interesting that the Brahmanas and the
Such a coincidence.
Hanabu
Yeah.
and the alien reproduction vehicle, they all use mercury in a spinning vortex.
Surprise. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. Oh, well, we should remember too that now these leaks are coming out and they get published, but we have a long history of leaks. And I have some of them. I've been digging into this for a long time. And here is a office memorandum that says United States government on to the director of the FBI from Guy Hotel, SAC, Washington. And I'm sure you've seen this particular memo, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh yeah.
know you've seen. This is the one where they actually talk about, okay, that we got some crash ones here, and we found 3 bodies in there. They were 3 foot tall, dressed in metallic clothing, and so on. And they talk a little more about it. And some people said, yeah, this is not a real document. This is fake. I know it is real. You know why? Because I wrote to the FBI, and I got a copy of it. And here is the letter from the FBI to me while I lived in Oman, saying that this particular document is no longer subject to the Freedom of Information Act. You can have it. That's one. And then we have the Kalahari Desert crash in South Africa. I got a complete file on it from a Jesuit priest in Switzerland. And here is the drawing of the hands of the aliens they found in that crash that went down in the Kalahari Desert, north of Pretoria.
Aage, can you repeat that? Because the page
They
blacked
said
out the mic.
in the dark.
Oh, that's much clearer now.
This is the hands of the aliens found in the Kalahari Desert crash. This is a copy of the autopsy report done by the South African Air Force in Pretoria.
Yeah,
And I think we got a problem. We froze. Nope.
Having a
Yeah,
little
we were
bandwidth
getting a
issue
little bit
there,
of a
Aage.
problem with your feed, Aage. There was just a network problem, most likely.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I just wanted to make a comment that all these documents and things, if you research, there's tons of authenticated documents, and there's hundreds of credible witness testimonies that are military, including admirals, generals, astronauts, and there's an embarrassment of information that the average person is just too busy trying to do their daily life to be able to have the time to be able to go through all this information and understand. Therefore, we have a spectrum of awareness in this matrix of perception that we live in. And so it's this documents and things you're sharing, Aage, is like useful for people who are just, they're kind of on the fence, not sure. They know there's something out there. They know there's something going on, but they don't understand why, authoritative voices have repeatedly denied over decades, and say, there's nothing to it, that it's, that there's no way anybody could get here and transverse the, the speed of light. And, what's interesting is the Dr. Eric Davis did a document on transversable wormholes and warp drives, which got released to the public.
Is this the same Dr. Davis that was in the
same
Wilson
one that is in the Wilson memo? And so, yeah, he's into some heavy stuff. So it's just kind of interesting. They're releasing that to the public.
Can you give us a little background on Davis?
I don't have a full background on him, but his name keeps coming up with EG&G, EC&G. The company that basically runs the Janet Airlines that flies the contractors out to Area 51 and S4 and other places. He's very well respected. I know that. He's a very well respected scientist. So, when you're dealing with one spectrum of the matrix of perception, with people who are still questioning this stuff, and it's hard too, because you've got censorship, going on through the social media channels to, get rid of conspiracy theories. You've got purposely placed disinformation and just, regular crazies, putting out information as well. And so you've got all this muddy waters in order to silt through this whole thing and see what is the patterns, that what's making sense, what's the possibility of this thing happening, and several years go by and this other thing that validates this thing happened. And when you start putting things together, on a timeline, start looking at all these witness testimonies, it starts to paint a very clear picture. And that picture is that it's such a crazy conclusion that they know they can easily discount the person as being a wild conspiracy theorist. We didn't win the war with the Nazis, and they actually infiltrated in and took over all of our perceptions, and so for generations we wouldn't have any concept, and they have all these deep underground bases where they're doing all their stuff, all but using taxpayer money and all these other sources, and they've controlled our education and our
well, they've weaponized a lot of words against each other. They've taught us to weaponize labels and things against each
absolutely
other, to polarize us and trigger us. This seems to be part of that same strategy: keep us divided and keep us ignorant of these technologies and these things that have been sequestered away. So I was greatly encouraged watching this whole thing with Bob Lazar and the whole interview and the documentary, him with Joe Rogan. A lot of these things to me were actually encouraging. This really seemed credible to me.
Do you know where the word, the term conspiracy theorist was originated? It was after Kennedy was assassinated. All these people came up with, questioning, the official Warren Commission headed by Alan Dulles, the person he fired, who actually set up his assassination directive, and who he warned about secret society, which was all 33rd degree Freemasons. Well, what happened was the CIA put out a dispatch in 1967 to claim anybody that's questioning to be a conspiracy theorist, and that they would have ulterior motives, like financial gain. They're trying to sell a book or something
Well,
like
that's what
that.
I'm saying. They weaponize it to where when you invoke the word, it causes an immediate negative trigger. So when we say uh, liberal or conservative,
Oh, right, right,
immediately
right. There's
triggered by
a
these people.
neuro-linguistic programming. It's a
Right.
association that's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the
Mhm.
CIA even lied to its own people that Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't employed by the CIA, he wasn't trained. And then uh, John McCone later, in a classified document, fully exposed that, yes, Lee Harvey Oswald was trained through the Office of Naval Intelligence as, as a spy. So they wanted to use Oswald because of the implicate the Soviets, and make it a big fear thing, like, oh, we better
Yeah.
drop this whole thing. So when all that happened, our back in 1955, our government got completely out of jurisdiction, and that is what people should be focusing on. Not If you research this, you'll see that document, the Admiral Wilson leak, is very authentic, and this
Yeah.
is what the message is that's going out to the world, is that, yeah, our we have our government has been taken out of jurisdiction, and this was a lot having to do with Nelson Rockefeller, because Eisenhower was looking for plausible deniability. And so he had the CIA MJ-12 operations completely restructured. And that's when, he threatened to invade Area 51 because they wouldn't let him in until, he allowed 2 agents to go over there, and they saw the extraterrestrials there and the craft. And but he was a very troubled Eisenhower that conveyed all this to Kennedy, and the rest of the story there.
I think there is a certain amount of. I think what people are kind of trying to navigate right now is there is disclosure hopium that's going on. So we've had a couple of over the last 6 months. We've had some actual moments of disclosure, if you will. This release that Jeremy Corbell did with his Bob Lazar documentary. We had the tic tac toe stuff last fall, and now these recent, I think just as recent in the news now, the senators have been briefed on the possibilities of UFOs, probably in a lot of sanitized containment, the way it was revealed to them.
Controlled
But
narrative.
yeah, it was a
Absolutely.
controlled narrative, so that we don't want to get Grandma in Omaha upset. But it seems to me, I guess the question is this part of an architecture or is this random? I kind of ask that. I don't think it's random though.
No, no, it's very, very. You don't have every single one of the mainstream media channels going in complete uh, in marching cadence along with this controlled narrative. They're
Right.
putting it out on, CNN, CBS, ABC, Washington Time. New York Times, Washington Post, all their controlled outlets, of which they have 6 corporations that control everything. It's controlled by the CIA, which is fed in through these billions of dollars of think tanks that are working on engineering our perceptions in order to fit the agenda that they fit at the yearly Bilderberg meetings that happened back just before Eisenhower lost control in 1954.
So here we are again at the dawn of. There's going to be another reveal. I feel coming in the next 6 months. Some kind of another reveal is coming. I kind of sense that the way this pattern seems to be at about 6 month increments, that there are these waves of disclosure that are happening. This is just me guessing. I have nothing else other than my own spidey sense about this, and that is that I have a sense that something is going to be revealed again soon, along with whatever else has been happening. I don't know how else to base that other than just a hunch that's from what I'm seeing, because it seems like it's been about every 6 months that something seems to be popping now in this subject. I
Or
don't know.
less than that, actually. Yeah.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
Well, this controlled narrative that all of a sudden the media is on board with, getting everybody to be aware that, oh, UFOs are real. Um, this whole controlled narrative, this Admiral Wilson leak is the last thing they'd ever want to have come out,
Yeah.
because it's basically saying that we've got technologies in these rogue, out of our government jurisdiction operations that Bob Lazar is a testament to, that has extremely advanced technologies that's being withheld from the rest of the world. They want to, this whole group that's going with the History Channel and everything. They're basically kind of saying, "Oh wow, we've got to get money together and do some research." They had anti-gravity back in October of 1954. So it makes it hypocritical, but it fits the controlled narrative for the rest of the people who have been reading New York Times and watching CNN, and don't know anything about this kind of stuff. It gives them a in to slowly accept this reality, to make it kind of spoon feed it in. You don't want to go into the deep underground bases and Antarctica and the Nazis and all that, and the moon and Mars and everything like that. It's too much. It's like overload. They've been conditioned from birth to this fake reality. I mean, I know. I mean, I was born when Forrestal was pushed out of the window 30 days later. Just watching, all the science fiction movies, and all the controlled narrative on the television, that, people just naturally want to believe that person, that commentator on the television is telling you the truth. You don't want to, think that they've got an agenda, that there's some higher corporate entity that's controlled through the CIA, through an agenda with a Bilderberg, that is writing the script, that is putting it up on the teleprompter for that person to read, that fits a particular agenda that's not necessarily based on the truth, and in fact usually isn't. Look at 9/11. Look at all the incidences that happened with CNN and the BBC, where they were saying they were given the script ahead of time, and Building 7 is clearly in the live video feed, still setting, and then said, "Oh, Building 7 fell down." Both the CNN and BBC slipped up. So there's a controlled narrative that's going on.
Absolutely.
That but the thing that's a danger is how they can spin it and manipulate the masses that they've hoodwinked into a manipulation that fits some agenda. I don't think they're going
But
to
we don't
pull
want to
the
believe that we've been manipulated. We don't want to, even when people are being manipulated, they just don't want to believe it.
denial is I mean, it's like, to me, it's exciting, it's like, wow, it's like, God, it sure be a boring universe if we're the only life in the entire, for these trillions of galaxies, of billions and billions of stars. It'd be, to me, it's exciting. You know why it's exciting? Because we have decades ahead of where we currently are, hidden technologies that could completely transform the world and the living situation of every person on this planet. And the Star Trek like civilization, well, we're watching, Star Trek like science fiction and stuff about portrayal of what it's going to be like in the future, and medical sick bays where they go and your arm is reformed again that got chopped off or whatever. All of this is like science fiction in everybody's heads. They don't realize the real thing that is probably blows away most science fiction movie scripts is going on underneath our feet in the secret underground operations and off planet as well.
The stuff that's not confirmed is still fascinating, because some of the concepts, when you think about them, like I'm a bit of a hard edge against the Corey Good narrative, and the David Wilcock narrative. I have this hard edge that says something's not right here. But at the same time, some of the concepts, stories, and lore that has come forward from those accounts are outside the norm so much you say to yourself, wow.
Oh, oh God. If you go into the secret space program, you're going into that's what we were talking about is just, the grade school level. Now we're going into like a whole nother level of the Solar Warden program that
Absolutely.
Gary McKinnon hacked in and discovered.
Sure.
That's a complete credible situation. Non-terrestrial officers, U.S. Navy fleet to fleet transfers going on completely. Whether or not all the secret space program whistleblowers are legit or not, there could be one person thrown in the mix to operate as the CIA calls the DDT operation, decoy,
Yeah.
distract, trash, takes down everybody else. William Tompkins has a tremendous amount of
Yeah.
documentation to back up who he is, and most all of these 20 and back as hard. Now that's a hard concept for the mainstream to try to wrap their mind around. All of them seem to have a consistent, somewhat consistency throughout. All of the different various testimonies, from being a slave to being
Right.
taken on the moon. On some reptilian was on the craft, like Naira Isley, testified.
Kramer. We've got, exactly. You don't have any evidence, but yet there is a consistency in stories, and yet there is something about these people coming forward that is very compelling when they tell their stories. You're like,
And some of them, like Bob Lazar has done like 4 lie detector tests.
I have no
And
doubt about Bob Lazar.
has,
He's probably the
Yeah.
one person I've seen
oh,
come
he's
forward.
totally legit. It's totally
Yeah,
legit.
I have to say.
And then you have some of these secret space program witnesses have done a lie detector tests and pass. I know Corey Good declined doing one, which I think would give him more credibility. I know Randy Kramer. He says, "I wish somebody would ask me." That it's somebody that says that. Wish somebody would ask me to do a lie detector test. That's somebody who's wanting to let you know that I want you to know the truth.
Yeah.
I want every vehicle I can possible to validate what I'm saying as bizarre. And his general told him, I want you to tell everything. And he said, everything, everything. The same thing with William Tompkins. He checked with Admiral Hugh Webster, who he was talking about classified stuff that the Navy's got, and the whole thing with the extraterrestrials and the Nordics. And he says, how much of this can I tell? He said, Bill, tell it all. Don't leave anything out. It's most important to the future of our country. And then you have Admiral Navy here, Admiral Tom Wilson saying to Dr. Greer, if you can get your people together, go before the media. And Dr. Greer had his life threatened if he was to go before the media. Fortunately, he made it through. So that was rather courageous of him
Well, Greer did also something
to
he
go
calls
forward.
his dead man's trigger. That if something happens to him, he has a trove of stuff that's going to expose a lot of people, according to what he says. And evidently,
Be wise to do. Yes, it
they
would make
believe.
sense.
Well, evidently, yeah, they believe him because evidently he's still alive. But it does line up with a lot of what you're saying, with everything you've ever said, and it lines up with what Bob Lazar has always been saying. So it's really been a privilege to have you on board as
Yeah.
part of our, sphere of influence to be able to tap into direct to somebody who's a disclosure witness who's got a tighter connection that I don't know anybody else that does.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But my testimony is minor compared to, the rest of these guys. Carl Wolf, based on look
Yeah, but
over here,
let's
bases on the
slow down,
moon.
Dan. Slow down
NASA
a second.
told to keep quiet.
You
All
actually
these
spent time with
incredible.
Dr. Greer on tour. You were on tour with Dr. Greer for a while, promoting a lot of this.
I felt it was important. I felt this was a world-changing event, and it actually kind of pissed me off that CNN and the rest of them made it sound like I could play the video clip. Made it sound like wanted to have a congressional hearing on the reality of UFOs, which, of course, to the public, it gets the thought into the public that, oh, okay, we are not alone. UFOs are real, but totally sanitized out anything about our legal government being denied access, that we have 0 point energy bases on the moon, nukes being shut down, what happened on the moon, 57 different species where you categorize, it's not like something new. All this, and future false flag events, which happened 4 months later. So all this was disclosed. So my testimony about, which I find is really quite common, that the Navy is getting ever so often, they're getting these reports of extraterrestrials coming out of the ocean, or whatever they are, German, American, or deep under earth, or whatever is going on. There appears to be bases deep under our oceans, and that seems to be, rather important. For people to be aware of, that we have like alien colonies underneath our oceans.
Wasn't it interesting? I did not hear this before, but as far as the Bob Lazar lore was concerned, but you also, I'm sure, might have noticed this. He said that one of the craft came from an archaeological expedition, that it wasn't necessarily extraterrestrial, or that it was, but when it was found, it was part of archaeology. It was not, something recent. It was something that had been buried for a long time.
Yeah, it's interesting. They had German, and they had extraterrestrial, and they had apparently archaeological, like they're finding down in the huge crafts down in Antarctica. It's starting to about to come public. People like Linda Moulton Howe is coming out with these Navy SEALs that are revealing these massive structures that appear to be part of what once was Atlantis, that the Nazis were all about. It was like they wanted, they felt they were the master race that came from Atlantis, and so Heinrich Himmler must have just been, when they discovered all that's going on in Antarctica. My God, they must have been in seventh Nazi heaven.
Is that possible?
God still is.
Say again, it didn't come through.
Oh, because of the Abenadi, so these went all over the German ancestral heritage of going to Tibet and all over the world, trying to find, the Ark of the Covenant, and all these different esoteric writings about the Vermatas and everything. And then they huge, massive 140,000 volumes I heard they took, and it just disappeared. I think it all got taken down to Antarctica.
Yeah, I'm sure they're still there, both the Nazis and many others. And I just want to touch on one more thing again, and that is that this disclosure has been going on for decades. It's just that it's never been given the media. There has been never talked about it in any official capacity. The South African Air Force, and this is on the back page. They were able to tap into the computer in the ship, and this is what they found: the language of the alien, and they were able to decode it. They could read what the aliens had on their computer in the ship. It was stored in a little crystal about the size of my thumb, and they had several worlds, total accumulated information on it.
All this needs to be shared with the public, and until the public realizes that we had an infiltration, and that infiltration had an agenda that was not for the the Republic of the United States. It was for a corporate, associated agenda that basically took over control of our mainstream media, starting with Alan Dulles' Operation Mockingbird, uh, and that what you see on television is completely, but when you start talking like that, all the people who've been so indoctrinated, so ingrained, with trusting these medias for so many years, it's just hard for them to realize that.
Well, this is the very thing that confuses me, Dan, is I hear a lot of people in the truther community, immediately they fault this or that network. And yet most people will not believe any of this information unless it comes from one of the most major networks. It's got to come from their favorite media outlet, or they don't believe it, or it's got to come from some sort of government announcement. And then at the same time, they're shooting holes in the government's announcement. So there's such a weird atmosphere of confusion about what people trust now. It's very
Yeah.
selective.
Right, and the people who watch CNN aren't watching Broadcast Team Alpha, and so you have
Maybe
this.
not.
Well, the
Yeah, they
ones that
don't
monitor
have
CNN, not watch CNN, they
Oh, I
monitor
see what you're saying.
CNN.
Right, right.
I do not.
Until yes, Aggie.
I do not watch CNN because I do not enjoy throwing up, so I just leave them alone.
That's great. Yeah,
So
it just seems to me that if you don't, it's okay, I think, to kind of dip your toe in a little and see what's happening, but to be a consume it and just absorb it and say, that's it. I don't think any of us that are paying attention here are in company with that. So maybe there is a kind of a mindless mass out there that responds to that way and just accepts whatever comes in and doesn't question it. But I think our audience is a little more sophisticated and says, okay, I can go there and I can hear what's being said, but I don't necessarily have to entertain it or believe it. But I do want to know what's being
No,
said.
because
That's different.
yeah, people go with their feelings. That's where
Yeah.
they want to be because that's comfortable. When they hear CNN,
right.
they hear the good stuff. That is exactly what they have been led to believe for so long. They don't want to step out of the box. It's
Mhm.
comfortable under that rock, and that's where they want to be.
They
Yeah.
That's
rely on
okay.
that falling back on the comfort zone.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It's much more than to try to imagine. That's why the giggle
yeah.
factor is used, because it's kind of like this comic relief. Like, it's not really real, is it?
And see,
You
it's
know?
all coupled along with you have people in a constant state of busyness to where they can't stop, slow down, and think. So they're on this treadmill to pay for all the consumerism that they're in debt up to their ears. And they're on this treadmill cycle paying off debt. They don't have time to sit and think about these esoteric subjects, and they leave it to somebody else. They'll leave politics to somebody else. They'll leave these kinds of subjects to somebody else. They just want to get through their week so they can party on the weekend or at least decompress on the weekend.
And that can get dangerous because you
Yeah,
can't really
yeah,
trust any one source. You have to really do your
Right.
own research.
yeah.
And when you, if people are really interested, do the research. My notes are at thewebmatrix.net. I'm just sharing that, go look at the references, look at all the information. When you look at all the information, then come to your own conclusion based on all the information, because the more deeper you research into this thing, the more that um, picture becomes a little clearer, a little larger picture of what actually happened, how our world is the way it is today, why our media is completely controlled, why we're still driving gasoline cars, using dangerous nuclear power plants, why we're still doing that. All these things go in people's minds and they don't really understand why. And if you, then the extraterrestrial issue is key to understanding all about this, because that's what started the national security state. The National Security Act 1947, which
It's
brought
left
in.
us in a state of technological retardation in a clinical sense. It's left us retarded technology and in our social development because this timeline has been so skewed into this military war machine and endless wars, blah, blah, blah. So I get it very much what you're saying, Dan. But Augie, we had a question. Several people in the chat room have
Well,
kind of reacted to some of
I just want to inject real quick that they basically manipulated it to the laws and the situations and the structures and such that they could infiltrate in and hide themselves through secrecy and not be detected while taking all the finances and benefits and operations and everything like that. I just
right.
wanted to add that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say there had been a few people. Everybody's kind of wondering about those documents, Augie. Is there a place they can find those? Do you have them on a site anywhere?
Um, they have not been highly publicized. It's just something that I found because I have foreign connections from all around the world. These people they got to me through others, and actually what I got was a second-hand copy. That was the original, and then there was made a copy
A scan.
from the original, and that's the one I sold. And I made a copy of that one for myself. And here is the two of them. Maybe we should do something with this, Tom.
Absolutely. I was just going to say if you could scan them, if people were asking about them, maybe we can make them available through the website or something like that. So that we
Yeah,
can
maybe
make
we should do
PDFs
that.
out of them.
And the
Mhm.
Admiral Wilson doc, if you go to the webmatrix.net, go to the 2002, it's all, everything's in chronological order.
Maybe
You
Augie,
can,
if you want to coordinate with Dan about getting these documents onto Dan's website, uh, that would be useful, I think.
That would be good. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
In
just go
fact,
to the
you've got such a
2002
trove.
timeline and it's, the links are right there for the PDF and everything. You can see what they were talking about, this technology that was not of this earth.
Let me just give you a little boost here, Dan. You've got a trove of information on your 1998 style website that, in spite of its generic nature, has such an amount of amazing. Just the timeline alone is worth for anybody new to this subject or wants to get more reinforced on this topic. Go to Dan's website, thewebmatrix.net. Take a look at what he's got there. You've got just just this
It,
invaluable.
it's not a professional site. It's just you're basically notes with
But the
some
information is
graphics
what's key.
along with it,
You got the
and
information there. That's what's key.
connecting the chronological events from the year 1900 to almost present day. I haven't been able to keep up.
I'm
Um,
type that into the chat here so that it's part of the record here.
And isolate the secret space program whistleblowers but I include it on the timeline of what they're talking about in case the testimonies do prove. We need more substantiating evidence. Gary McKinnon and William Tompkins are two very strong substantiating evidence, and I think is probably more going to come forward, because they're having like Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, having total recalls, because as they come back on this timeline in the 20 years, their memories are coming back to them after they got mind wiped.
You just used the allegory or the example of sci-fi, and again, it was put in plain sight for us.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then, remember the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Erased? Remember?
You've been
And
erased.
in fact, Brigadier General Stephen Lovkin, who said that Eisenhower lost control of the corporations, he said somebody warned him. He says, you're going to be erased. And he says, what do you mean erase? Oh, they'll erase you and erase your family and your connections, everything. And he was threatened, but he's a key witness that was on President Eisenhower's staff, that was aware that he put it mildly, Eisenhower, that it was not going to be in the best of hands. And his warning speech, only alert knowledgeable citizenry that beware the misplaced powers within the
Military
corporations
industrial
of the
complex.
military industrial complex. I
Yep.
just add the word corporations, and to take nothing for granted. And I think that's where we're at today, is like, we should not take anything for granted. Anything we watch on television, anything we watch on alternative media, they're desperately trying to control the perception on right now. You can see they're just ramping up the algorithms. More and more channels are going down. It's the key from contaminating the rest of the herd, you could say, you know, with their mainstream media narrative and where they're going with it. All these little voices of conspiracy theorists are pointing at different things that they don't want people to know about. So that's why they're doing this censorship thing. You know, hopefully broadcast team Alpha will, you know, come through
Hopefully, we will
the
prevail.
muck.
Well, Dan, this has been fascinating again. Thank you for coming on board. Aage, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Sure.
We haven't heard from you much.
No, I just, for those that asked about this South African Air Force, I think you can Google the Kalahari Desert Crash. There may be something on there because this has not been communicated very much. You may find it, but very little on it anywhere because I haven't done much with it, and I think I was one of the few that got it.
Very good. Well, Dan, Aage, I guess if you guys don't have anything more, I guess we're going to call it a game and see you folks next week. So, Dan, thank you once again. Thewebmatrix.net is your website. Excellent commentary. It seems like things are breaking. I'm excited. I'm. It seems like every other day I'm hearing good things or things are being revealed. So
I
And
love seeing. Oh, go ahead, Aki.
Yeah, I'm totally with Tom on this one. Within the 6 months, I think we're going to have a major reveal again.
it seems like things are cascading.
Yeah.
I love seeding these thoughts out to our millions and millions of listeners out there.
And hey,
At
you know
least
what? We'll throw this out there. If there's a whistleblower out there that you've got something, get a hold of Dan, get a hold of us. Doesn't matter. We don't care. We just want this thing to advance. We all want disclosure. So if you're thinking about coming forward, if it's not us, go to somebody.
it happens through awareness. You know, secrecy is being used for corruption, while disclosure actually helps us move toward a transformation, because you can't transform a situation you're not even aware exists.
Yeah.
So true.
Absolutely.
Okay, gentlemen. And our folks in our chat room, thank you so much for all of you for being here. You have definitely been a part of our show as well, and so we appreciate you all being here. And I'm sorry that I may have butchered some of the chat room names. So that's my inability to focus properly. But anyway, thank you all for coming out. And with that, I'm going to push the goodbye music, and we'll see you all next week with a brand new show.